The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I could bring myself to open it. I knew what it would say. I'd paid for it, after all. Every single one of the 200 cream-colored envelopes with the gold foil edges. $1,400, if you're counting. But when I finally slid my finger under the flap, it wasn't the elegant script that made my hands shake. It was the seating chart tucked inside. A little card, professionally printed, that showed me exactly where I belonged in my son's wedding. Table 12, in the back, next to the DJ booth. My name was there, Margaret Ann Whitmore, squeezed between two of Sienna's old sorority sisters I'd never met. Brandon's name was nowhere near mine. Neither was the head table, where I'd assumed, foolishly it seemed now, that the mother of the groom might sit. I set the card down carefully, the way you might set down something fragile that you're afraid you might break or throw. Through my kitchen window, I could see the mountains. I'd lived in this house in Boulder for 34 years, raised Brandon here after his father died when he was 6, built a life here, one careful decision at a time. The mortgage was paid off. The garden I'd planted when Brandon was in kindergarten had mature aspens now, their leaves turning gold in the September light. This house was supposed to be my security. Instead, over the past 5 years, it had become Brandon and Sienna's ATM. The first time they asked for money, Brandon had just graduated with his MBA. "Just a small loan, Mom," he'd said, "to cover the gap between my signing bonus and the first paycheck. You know how corporate accounting works." I didn't, actually. But I'd written the check for $4,000 anyway. It had seemed like such a small thing then, such an easy way to help. He never paid it back. There was always something. The security deposit for their apartment, furniture for their living room, Sienna's car payment when she was between marketing positions. Then came the bigger asks. Could I co-sign their lease? Could I help with the down payment on their new Audi? Just temporarily, of course. Just until Brandon's promotion came through. I kept saying yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, because what else does a mother do? Especially a mother who'd been alone for so long, who'd worked double shifts as a dental hygienist to make sure her son never felt the absence of his father, who'd saved every penny to send him to the University of Denver, to give him opportunities I'd never had. I thought I was investing in his future. I didn't realize I was purchasing my own irrelevance. The wedding expenses started 8 months ago. Sienna had burst into my house without knocking, the way she'd started doing after they got engaged, tablet in hand and eyes shining. "Margaret," she'd said. "Not Mom, never Mom. I found the most incredible venue, Spruce Mountain Ranch. It's where all the influencers get married." She'd shown me pictures. Wooden beams and mountain views and fairy lights strung between pine trees. It was beautiful. It was also $45,000 just for the space. "Brandon and I have been saving," she'd said, "but with his student loans and our lifestyle, we're a bit short. We were hoping you might consider contributing." Contributing, as if this were a potluck dinner and not a down payment on a small house. "How short?" I'd asked. "Well," she'd scrolled through her spreadsheet. "If you could cover the venue, the photographer, and the flowers, we can handle the rest. That comes to about $62,000. I should have said no. I should have said absolutely not. I should have said that $62,000 was more than I'd spent on my own wedding, my car, and my last 5 years of living expenses combined. Instead, I'd said, "Let me think about it." And Sienna had smiled. The kind of smile that said she already knew what my answer would be. That night, I'd sat at my kitchen table with my financial documents spread around me, my retirement account, my savings, the investment fund I'd been building since Brandon was born. I could afford it, technically, if I didn't travel, if I didn't replace my 12-year-old Toyota, if I didn't have any emergencies, if I didn't mind spending my golden years eating rice and beans so my son could have fairy lights. But then I'd thought about Brandon's face when I'd told him I couldn't afford to help with his business school applications. How he'd looked at me like I'd failed him somehow. How Sienna had started calling me Margaret instead of asking what I'd like to be called. I'd called him the next morning and said yes. The checks started flowing after that. $5,000 for the photographer's deposit, $12,000 for the flowers, $8,000 for the videographer Sienna decided she couldn't live without, $3,000 for the rehearsal dinner venue, $4,500 for her dress alterations because the sample size was too big and she wanted perfection. Every time I wrote a check, I told myself this was the last one. Every time my phone rang, I knew it wouldn't be. Mom? Brandon's voice always had the same careful tone now, the tone you use when you're about to ask for something. Sienna was wondering if you'd gotten the invoice for the cocktail hour upgrades yet. The signature drink package? It's just another $2,000. Just another $2,000. Those 4 words had cost me $83,000 over 5 years. I'd counted. Late one night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd gone through my bank records and added it all up. Car payments, rent, security deposits, student loan payments I'd made when Brandon said he was struggling. The down payment on their Audi that was supposed to be a loan but had somehow become a gift. $83,000. And now they'd seated me in the back of the wedding I'd paid for, next to the DJ booth, where I'd spend 4 hours listening to bass-heavy remixes while Brandon and Sienna danced under fairy lights I'd purchased. I picked up my phone, then set it down, picked it up again. This was the pattern. I'd see something that hurt me. I'd feel angry. Then I'd feel guilty for being angry. Then I'd convince myself I was being petty. Then I'd let it go. But this time, my finger was already dialing. Mom? Brandon sounded distracted. I could hear Sienna laughing in the background, the clink of wine glasses. They were probably at another restaurant I'd eventually help pay for. I got the seating chart, I said. Oh, good. Yeah, Sienna finalized that yesterday. The calligrapher is starting next week. Table 12. Silence. Then, what? I'm at table 12. In the back? Next to the DJ booth? Oh. He sounded confused, like he couldn't understand why this might matter. Well, yeah. Sienna's organizing it by friend groups and family sides. Her mom's in the back, too. It's just how the layout worked. Brandon, I've paid for most of this wedding, and we're so grateful, Mom, really. But seating arrangements are kind of Sienna's thing, you know? She's very visual. Very visual, as if that explained why the woman who'd written checks totaling $62,000 wasn't sitting with her own son. Where are you seated? I asked. At the head table. Obviously. Obviously. With Sienna's parents? Well, no. They're at table 2 with Sienna's grandmother and her favorite uncle. It's a whole thing. But Mom, this is really not... When were you going to tell me? Tell you what? That I didn't matter enough to sit with my own son at his wedding. I heard him sigh. The kind of sigh that said I was being difficult. That said I was making a big deal out of nothing. Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just a seating chart. Besides, you should be happy. Table 12 is right by the dance floor. You'll have a great view. A great view of the wedding I'd financed but apparently wasn't important enough to be included in. I need to go, I said. Wait. Before you do, Sienna wanted me to ask about the band deposit. They need another $5,000 by Friday, or they'll give the slot to another wedding. Another $5,000. I hung up. For a long time, I just sat there, the seating chart in one hand, my phone in the other. The late afternoon sun was coming through my kitchen window, making everything golden. My garden, my countertops, the framed photo on my refrigerator of Brandon at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a fish we'd caught together at Lake Granby. When had I stopped being his mother and become his checkbook? I thought about my retirement account. I was 62 years old. I'd planned to retire at 65, to finally travel the way I'd always dreamed about. Greece, Ireland, New Zealand, all the places I'd cut out of magazines and pinned to a corkboard in my bedroom when I was younger. That corkboard was still there. The pictures were yellowed now, the corners curling. I'd been adding to it for 40 years. I'd never taken a single trip. There was always something more important. Brandon's orthodontist bills, Brandon's college fund, Brandon's car insurance, Brandon's wedding. Always Brandon. My phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. Hey, Margaret, did B talk to you about the band deposit? Also, the florist needs final approval on the centerpiece upgrade. It's just another $800, but the peonies are so worth it. LMK. Just another $800. I looked at the seating chart again. Table 12. In the back. Next to the DJ booth. And something inside me. Something that had been bending and bending for 5 years. For 34 years. For my entire life. Finally snapped. I opened my banking app. Found the wedding venue's payment portal. The final payment of $22,000 was due in 2 weeks. I'd already transferred the money into my checking account, ready to click submit. My finger hovered over the transfer button. What would happen if I didn't pay it? If I just stopped? The venue would cancel. There would be phone calls, screaming, probably. Brandon and Sienna would be furious. They'd call me selfish, cruel. They'd say I was ruining the most important day of their lives. But whose money was ruining whose life? Exactly. I closed the app, opened my photos instead, scrolled back through the years of pictures I'd taken. Brandon at his high school graduation. Brandon at college orientation. Brandon with Sienna at their engagement party, her ring catching the light. In every photo, I was either holding the camera or cropped out of the frame. I kept scrolling. Further back, to photos from when Brandon was young. Just the two of us. His small hand in mine at the pumpkin patch. Both of us covered in flour after attempting Christmas cookies. Him asleep on my shoulder during a road trip to Yellowstone. In those pictures, I could see it in his face. The way he looked at me, like I was his whole world. When had that changed? When had I become just a means to an end? My phone rang. Brandon again. I let it ring. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. First, I called the wedding venue. A cheerful woman named Angela answered. Hi, this is Margaret Whitmore. I'm calling about the Sienna Chen and Brandon Whitmore wedding. Oh, yes. Beautiful couple. I need to cancel the final payment. Pause. I'm sorry. Did you say cancel? The $22,000 final payment. I won't be making it. Oh. Her voice shifted, professional concern replacing cheerfulness. I see. May I ask why? If there's an issue with the payment plan, we can... There's no issue. I'm simply choosing not to pay for it. But Mrs. Whitmore, the contract states that if the final payment isn't received 2 weeks before the event, we'll have to release the venue. The wedding is in 6 weeks. I understand. Are you sure? This will mean, I'm sure. After I hung up, I sat very still. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Then came the florist. Then the photographer. Then the videographer. Every vendor I'd put my credit card down for, I called and canceled. Some of them argued. Some of them were sympathetic. The cake designer, a woman named Teresa, had actually laughed. Good for you, she'd said. I've been in this business 20 years. I can smell a spoiled bride from a mile away. That girl called me 4 times yesterday about buttercream texture. By the time I was done, it was dark outside. My list was complete. Every payment stopped. Every deposit refunded to my account. $83,000 I'd given them. $62,000 I'd just taken back. My phone had been ringing non-stop for the last hour. Brandon, Sienna, Brandon again. A number I didn't recognize that was probably Angela from the venue. I'd ignored them all. Now I turned my phone completely off. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat in my backyard, and watched the stars come out over the mountains. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like I could breathe. The pounding on my door started at 8 the next morning. I'd slept better than I had in months. No anxiety, dreams about money. No waking up at 3 a.m. to check my bank balance. Just deep, solid sleep. The pounding continued. I pulled on my robe and went to the door. Through the peephole, I could see Brandon and Sienna, both of them looking like they'd barely slept. I opened the door but left the chain on. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" Brandon's face was red, his voice raw. "Good morning." "Don't good morning me," the venue called. The florist called. The photographer called. They said you canceled everything. I did. You. He stopped, like he couldn't quite process this. "Why would you do that?" "Because I changed my mind." Sienna pushed forward. Her eyes were puffy, makeup streaked. "Changed your mind?" "Margaret, this is our wedding. You can't just change your mind." "Actually, I can. It's my money." "But you promised." Sienna's voice was climbing into a shriek. "You promised you'd pay for it. And you promised you'd include me. Table 12, Sienna, you put me at table 12. That's what this is about?" Brandon looked genuinely baffled. "A seating chart? You're destroying our wedding over a seating chart?" "I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply not paying for it anymore." "Mom, please." Brandon's voice cracked. "Please don't do this. We can fix the seating. Put you wherever you want. Front row, head table, anywhere. It's not about the seating." "Then what is it about?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he gotten so entitled? So blind to what he was taking? "It's about the fact that you called me 4 times yesterday, and every single time it was to ask for money. It's about the fact that I've given you $83,000 over 5 years, and you've never once asked how I'm doing. It's about the fact that I'm 62 years old, and I've never been to Europe because I've been too busy funding your lifestyle." "That's not fair," Sienna said. "We never forced you to give us anything." "You're right. You didn't force me. You just expected it. And I was stupid enough to keep giving." Brandon's expression shifted. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the shift from anger to strategy. "Okay," he said, his voice softening. "Okay, I hear you. You're right. We've been taking you for granted. I'm sorry, truly. But Mom, the wedding is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. All our friends have made plans. Sienna's family is flying in from California. We can't just cancel, then pay for it yourselves. We can't. We don't have $60,000 just lying around. Then have a smaller wedding. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You want a $45,000 venue and a $12,000 photographer and signature cocktails, but you don't want to pay for it. You want me to pay for it. And then you want to seat me in the back and pretend I don't exist." "That's not true." But even as Sienna said it, I could see her face. She knew it was exactly true. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done funding your dreams while I give up mine. I'm done being invisible. I'm done being an ATM." "So that's it?" Brandon's voice was cold now. "You're just going to ruin everything out of spite?" "This isn't spite, Brandon. This is self-preservation. If you do this," he said slowly, "we're done. You understand that? You'll lose your son over a wedding." The words hung in the air between us, and I realized something. If my son was only my son when I was writing checks, then I'd already lost him years ago. "Then I guess we're done," I said. I closed the door. The next 3 weeks were quiet. Too quiet. No phone calls. No texts. No unexpected visits. I'd expected anger, rage, more pounding on my door. Instead, there was silence. It hurt worse than I'd thought it would. I kept reaching for my phone, wanting to call Brandon, wanting to apologize, wanting to take it all back. But then I'd remember table 12, and I'd remember the way he'd looked at me when he said we're done. Not sad, not hurt, just cold, calculating. Like I'd stopped being useful and therefore stopped being worth his time. On the 4th week, my doorbell rang. I'd been in my garden, planting bulbs for spring, something I'd never had time for before, always too busy working overtime to fund Brandon's next request. When I answered the door, I didn't recognize the woman standing there. She was about 30, professionally dressed, holding a portfolio. "Mrs. Whitmore? I'm Angela. From Spruce Mountain Ranch?" My stomach dropped. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause problems for you personally. What? Oh no, you didn't. She smiled. Actually, I wanted to thank you and talk to you about something. She came in. I made tea, and she told me a story. I've been a wedding coordinator for 8 years, Angela said, and I've watched hundreds of parents bankrupt themselves for weddings that their kids barely thank them for. Your situation with Sienna and Brandon? It's not unique. It's epidemic. She opened her portfolio. After you canceled, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Sienna to see if they wanted to rebook at a smaller scale, something they could afford themselves. Do you know what she said? I shook my head. She said, "Why would we pay for it ourselves when we can just find another parent to hit up?" Then she laughed, like it was a joke. My chest tightened. That's when I realized something. I've been complicit. I've been taking money from parents like you and pretending it's about love when really it's about exploitation. So I quit. You quit? I quit. And I'm starting my own business. Wedding planning for people who want to celebrate, not perform. Real budgets, real expectations. And I wanted to ask you something. She pulled out a folder. You paid a $5,000 deposit to Spruce Mountain Ranch. Non-refundable, according to the contract. But I convinced my former boss to give it back. All of it. As a gift. For being brave enough to stop the cycle. She handed me a check. $5,000. Use it for yourself, Angela said. Take that trip to Europe. Buy that thing you've been wanting. Do something that makes you happy. After she left, I sat with the check in my hands for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Greece. The departure date was 3 days after what would have been Brandon's wedding. I almost didn't go. The morning of my flight, I'd woken up thinking about Brandon, wondering if he'd found another venue, wondering if he'd gotten married without telling me, wondering if he ever thought about me at all. My phone had stayed silent for 6 weeks. No calls, no texts, not even an angry email. I'd lost my son. But as I drove to the airport, I realized something. I hadn't lost him. I'd lost the illusion of him, the fantasy that if I just gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, he'd see me, value me, love me back. The real Brandon, the one who'd looked me in the eye and said, "We're done," because I wouldn't fund his wedding, had never been mine to lose. Greece was beautiful, more beautiful than I'd imagined. I spent 2 weeks island hopping, eating fresh fish and olive oil, watching sunsets over the Aegean Sea. I met other travelers, made friends, laughed more than I had in years, and I didn't think about Brandon once. Well, almost once. I was sitting at a cafe in Santorini when my phone buzzed. I'd finally turned on international service, just in case. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Mrs. Whitmore. This is Sarah Chen, Sienna's sister. I don't know if you remember me from the engagement party. I wanted you to know that Brandon and Sienna postponed the wedding. Apparently, they're reassessing their financial priorities. I also wanted you to know that what Sienna said about you was cruel and what Brandon allowed was worse. You deserve better. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I'm in Greece, and I'm doing wonderfully." Her response came immediately. "Good for you." I put my phone away and ordered another glass of wine. When I got home, there was a package on my doorstep. Inside was a photo album. On the first page was a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Claire, Angela's business partner. She told me about what you did, and it inspired me to do something too. I stopped funding my daughter's designer handbag habit and started my photography again. These are from my first gallery show. Angela thought you'd like to see what your courage made possible. Thank you for showing us it's never too late to choose yourself." I flipped through the album, beautiful black and white photographs of older women. Each one looked strong, determined, free. The last page had a photo of me. I didn't remember it being taken, but Angela must have snapped it the day she came to my house. I was in my garden, hands dirty, face turned toward the sun. I looked happy. I put the album on my coffee table, where the wedding seating chart used to sit. That night, my doorbell rang one more time. Brandon stood on my porch, alone. No Sienna, no anger, just my son, looking smaller somehow, younger. "Mom," he said, "can I come in?" I almost said no, almost closed the door the way he'd closed the door on me, but I didn't. I let him in. We sat in my living room, the same living room where he'd played with Legos as a kid, where he'd done his homework, where he'd told me about his first girlfriend, his college acceptance, his job offer, where he'd asked me for money, over and over and over. "Sienna and I broke up," he said finally. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" I thought about it. "For you, yes. For me? I don't know." He nodded, looked down at his hands. "She wasn't who I thought she was. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't want to see it. After the wedding fell apart, things got bad. She kept saying we could just ask her parents, or get a loan, or find someone else to help. And I realized she didn't actually care about marrying me. She cared about having the wedding she'd always dreamed about. And what about you? What about me? What did you care about?" He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," he said finally. "I thought I knew. I thought I wanted the success and the car and the nice apartment and the perfect wedding. But Mom, I'm 34 years old and I just realized I don't even like my job. I've been doing what I thought I was supposed to do for so long that I forgot to figure out what I actually wanted. I know the feeling." He looked up at me then. Really looked at me. "You went to Greece." "I did. I saw the pictures on your Facebook. You looked happy." "I was. I am. I'm glad." He meant it. I could hear it in his voice. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. For taking you for granted. For letting Sienna treat you like an ATM. For choosing a stupid wedding over my own mother. Why did you? Because it was easier. Because you always said yes. Because I got used to you being there, and I forgot that you were a person with your own dreams and your own life." He wiped his eyes. "I forgot that you mattered." I felt my own eyes filling. "When did I stop being your mom and become your bank account?" I asked. "I don't know, but I want to fix it. If you'll let me." "How?" "I don't know that either. But maybe we could start with dinner? My treat. Actually my treat. Not me asking you to pay and pretending it's my treat." I smiled, despite myself. "And maybe," he hesitated, "maybe you could tell me about Greece, and I could actually listen instead of just waiting for my turn to talk?" It wasn't enough. Not yet. One apology couldn't fix 5 years of being used. 5 years of being invisible, but it was a start. "Okay," I said. "Dinner. Your treat. Thank you, Mom." As he left, he paused at the door. "Table 12 was unforgivable," he said. "For what it's worth, it is." He nodded and left. I sat in my living room for a while after he was gone, looking at Claire's photo album, at the picture of me in my garden, face turned toward the sun. I didn't know if Brandon and I would fix things. I didn't know if he'd really change, or if this was just temporary guilt, but I knew something else. I knew that I'd survived losing him. I knew that I'd chosen myself and lived through it. I knew that I was 62 years old, and I'd finally learned to say no. And I knew that whether Brandon stayed in my life or not, I was going to be okay. Better than okay. I was going to be free.